What does a good lifting routine actually look like for runners? Today I want to talk about the key components of what you should be looking for in a good lifting program if you are a runner or runner looking to add in lifting to your routine. Now, not all runners have to become hybrid athletes in order to lift to support their running training. There's going to be similar key components of what I talk about when it comes to just good lifting training overall that you're gonna wanna be looking for in your running training program. So first things first, if you love my YouTube channel and you don't wanna miss out on any future videos and you like this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button, like this video, and leave me a comment telling me if you learned something or something you'd love to learn or see in a future video. Let's dive in. When it comes to lifting to support running training, some of the most common mistakes I see from running coaches even, or runners giving lifting advice that's well intended, is training runners to make their lifting mimic or look exactly like running. There's actually no specific or unique runner's training program or running lifting program, but there's strategies and or application that we use that can better suit and support our running training goals. One of the things that people think they need though, when they are lifting to support running or endurance training, is to then turn their lifting training into an endurance session itself. This means that people often end up using really high reps, like 15, 20 to 30 rep exercises, or very light or low loads in order to do higher reps in their exercises. Matched with often runners, or the advice given to runners is to lift lighter or lighter than they need to actually elicit muscle strength or hypertrophy gains. So you're actually underloading yourself and then going through a bunch of reps. So you're not really getting the best bang for your buck for muscle growth, strength, or support that can translate and support your running training. It kind of ends up just being this high rep, go through the motion type thing. And while all lifting is good and all lifting is beneficial, we want to make sure we're getting the most out of our training sessions. So what I mean by this is we see a lot of running, programs or exercise selection or suggestions that look like someone's picking a really light weight, and then you're kind of just going through the motion. You're not really having to focus when you're doing it. So it's like somebody, you're grabbing this as just a 10-pound dumbbell, which might be hard and relative to you, but for somebody it might be too light, and people are just kind of, passively going through the motion and not really having to focus on what they're doing. If you've watched any of my other training videos on strength training, we want to lift heavy enough that we can actually focus and it actually challenges us on the exercises that we're doing and selecting. So instead, you want to make sure you're picking heavy enough weights that actually challenge you and can allow you to go through specific reps and sets of your movements, hitting an RPE of 7, 8, or 9, depending on the movement and the goal of the program and the target, and or getting you into, if you had 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 reps left in the tank if you were to go all the way to failure. If you need more help on this, watch my video on how to select your weights. So that's going to look like maybe this instead, where you're having to load this up and actually focus on the movement and moving that weight. Now, a lot of runners are afraid to lift heavy and or do lower reps with higher weight because they're worried it's going to add too much mass, make them bulky, and make them slow. But it's the contrary. Runners actually need heavy resistance training focused on compound movements, whether that's heavy with a barbell, a machine, or heavy weighted dumbbells, to actually move through the major movement patterns like squatting and hinging and lower body stress, as well as training your upper body as well, actually targeted to load those close or relative to failure in order to get strength gains or muscle gains if you're looking for those as well. It's important to note that the biggest consideration here when training and adjusting for these things is managing volume. The management of that volume will, 1, allow you to not hulk out from your training. You can manage that. You don't have to lift like a bodybuilder and look like a bodybuilder to be a runner unless you'd like to. And 2, will help with some of the fatigue and the carryover from the lifting to the running. People tend to think if they use lighter weight and do higher reps, they won't have as much fatigue for their running, and that's more running friendly. What you actually want to be doing is thinking about less reps and higher weight. So when you're thinking about your heavy compound movements, like your barbells, your back squats, your deadlift, your trap bar deadlifts, your heavy movement patterns like that, maybe working in the 3 to 6 range for 2, 3, 4 sets of that, depending on how much volume or what you're trying to train, and keeping those compounds actually heavier and less volume. Volume is going to accumulate with higher reps and more sets over time, but you could still keep that intensity high and pull volume back by keeping in those more strength ranges. It's also kind of the characteristic of training that you're not getting as commonly with your running training, which is a lot of high load repeated movement patterns. We don't want to mimic that in the gym and our lifting training. For accessory moves, you want to think about potentially working in, I love the 6 to 8 range for runners because it's a way to get in a little bit more reps, but also load a little bit more heavily without accumulating a ton of volume and fatigue. But also it's totally fine to also train in that 8 to 12 range, that more traditional hypertrophy range as well, to complement your running training. Personally, like I breadth and depth of that 3 to 15 and working along that or moving around that across the year or over time within our training, but don't be afraid to skew yourself on that heavier end of the spectrum. And even only doing 2 heavy sets can give you a lot of bang for your buck, won't immediately hulk you out, but can help you support gaining or supporting muscle alongside your training goals if you do have more hybrid training goals and approach. It's important to note here as well for runners who are hesitant with gaining muscle mass that 1, muscle is a good thing. We want that for health and aging, but 2, nutrition and eating in surpluses for select periods of time are really going to drive that more than the lifting itself. And sometimes gaining muscle actually might help boost your performance. It's not necessarily always a detriment like we think it is. Now, the next thing we want to think about when we're training for lifting to support our running is not just lifting heavy enough, getting it in a more appropriate stimulus with enough intensity, but also what we were specifically training and targeting in the gym. The 2 things that I think are most important in your training program as runners trying to lift are plyometrics and lower body movement patterns. So when we're thinking about this in the gym, plyometrics are going to be our hopping, our jumping, our skipping, our leaping, and we want to ease in those over time from easier stuff that's potentially like skipping or double leg pogo hops to more advanced things like squat jumps, lunge jumps, depth drops, and or reactive landing and rebounding type exercises. But starting easy with skipping and hopping, pogo hops are great things to start with, or even just your traditional jumping rope and advancing that as you go. And the next thing I really love there is going to be lower body specific movement patterns that are targeted at loading your hips, your glutes, your hamstrings, your quads, your calves, and your feet. The things that are potentially a little bit more running specific when it comes to runners programs are 1, definitely including plyometrics, but 2, a lot of the lower body moves are going to look very similar and tried and true to a lot of things that you're going to see in a lot of lifting programs. But we want to make sure that we're doing things like training our hips, making sure that we are, doing things that allow us to potentially train some stabilization in our feet or that whole body balance chain and landing that we are having with our running, and or training calves specifically and not skipping that, which I think a lot of people tend to do. So to recap so far, we want to be making sure that we're lifting heavy and we're not training intensity for volume or lifting light to avoid soreness or fatigue or interference. We want to reduce volume by moving to less reps rather than a million reps and lifting heavy at the same time. You want heavy and less reps, kind of using your strength training sessions to get stronger and or support muscle development and power development within your training. You want to be including plyometrics, and you want to be doing lower body specific work that is either double leg or single leg. It can be isolated and or your major compound movements. All that will benefit your running, but then including things that target your hips as well as your feet and ankles and the stability within that, because that's something that runners tend to struggle with. And then also specifically training your calves through things like calf raises, calf isometrics, things along the lines of that. Other than that, when we think about lifting for runners, we want to think about potentially relying more on full body or full body and upper body split days. I really love 2 to 3 full body days a week or 2 full body days with an upper body split. This is exactly what we do in our lifestyle, perform, and race training programs that are designed to really parallel and pair very nicely with all of our running programs within the Lyss Method. We would love to have you, and the link below to join is here. And this is what we like to do, so you're distributing your volume and your lifts across the week in a way that is recoverable, is allowing you to hit them at least twice for most major movement patterns, but allows you to train your body in a way that isn't overly fatiguing, and also includes plyometric and power development to complement your running training. So you can get stronger in things like your compounds, balance your accessories, target and hit the things that you want and need, while also recovering and supporting your runs, your speed work, and your long runs without it being too fatiguing. I think a lot of runners, coming from a traditional space, potentially of bodybuilding or powerlifting, get really clung onto this lifting 4, 5, 6 days a week. But sometimes I think it's actually better to have less but higher quality full body sessions, and you get more bang for your buck out of that. And that also allows you to save time in the gym each week, have more time for your running, which can be traditionally more time consuming, but also give you all the components of a good, well-rounded fitness program, while also factoring in and including accessories or core moves or support exercises that that are a little bit more complementary to your running that maybe other non-running athletes might not need. Now, when we're thinking about equipment or use or movements for runners, one of the things I really want to state here as well is that you don't have to lift with a barbell. Heavy back squats and heavy deadlifts or trap bar deadlifts or machine-based movements that you can load heavy for compounds are great and fantastic, but not all runners are training at the gym, or they want to train at home, or they want to only use dumbbells and or quick, 20, maybe 30-minute lifts as they're going because that's all they have time for, and that's great. I want you to lift in whatever way that you can to support yourself while also running, because it's really important for health and longevity, but also supporting your performance and just the resilience of your body. And so it's absolutely okay to stick to dumbbells and kettlebells, but what you want to really make sure is that you're getting heavy enough weights, or you have a breadth of weights that can actually challenge you, especially your lower body. You want to make sure that you have at least enough that you can kind of challenge or do enough reps and sets to get the fatigue or the stimulus that we are looking for. And if you need help with that, be sure to go back and check out my video on how to make at-home training harder, because it will help you with that. All in all, when it comes to lifting for runners, there is no special or unique program, but what we can do is take the tried and true principles of a good lifting program and set it up in a way that allows you to get stronger, focuses on muscle support and development, as well as then sprinkles in the things that complement running well. So what this is going to look like is your tried and true traditional warm-up, an easy cardio warm-up, maybe going through the motions of some mobility or lightweight or bodyweight type movements. I really like 2 to 3 quick little exercises in 2 to 3 rounds, just get your blood flowing. And I think this is a great place to place core or even calf work if that's something that you tend to neglect or skip or don't have the time and energy for at the end. Your warm-up doesn't have to just be this perfectly curated warm-up. I love in the Lyss Method, we program stuff in there that allows people to get in some of the extra work or support work that we need there in the program, whether that's some pogo hops or some calf work or some core work early on while they're warming up, but it's not as loading and demanding. And then moving into either your plyometrics, if you're doing your plyometrics, doing them 1 or 2 days a week, including them before your main compound lifts, having them there in that first slot of your program after you've warmed up, you're ready and prepared. Moving into your main bread and butter compounds, your squats, your deadlifts, your pressing, your benching, your rowing, all of that heavy compound movements there. And then going into your accessory work where you're using, a variation of full body targeting accessory work. Again, we want to develop our back and our shoulders and, our core and our glutes and our hamstrings and quads. A lot of the lower body stuff like step ups and RDLs and glute bridges and split squats and all of those things are also actually really fantastic for runners, and we have another video coming or is already out on glute training for runners that I've recorded as well. But all the lower body moves in that video will actually be really helpful for you in getting ideas of what to put into your program, and then including things like your core and your upper body movements there and the accessories in a way that can support your training. But you don't need 1,000,000 reps and sets or 1,000,000 days a week in the gym. I love for your compound movements, let's think about 2 to 3 really hard sets if they're moving more in that 6 to 8 range, or maybe 3 to 4 sets if they're in that lighter range of 2, 3, 4 reps. And then moving into your accessory work, I really like something called 2 hard sets. And 2 hard sets is just taking 2 sets of your accessory work within an 8 or 9 RPE, so 8 or 9 out of 10 effort, or 1 to 2 reps in the tank. I think that's great to get a lot of quality without a lot of quantity, so that way you can be efficient, quick in the gym and get the stimulus you're looking for to support your running training goals, especially if you're short on time. This doesn't mean 3 sets isn't a bad thing. You absolutely can do that. But for a lot of clients and people and runners, you're short on time, you're trying to get your lifts in, and that 2 hard set rule is a great addition to your running training kind of toolbox so that you can get in what you need and get in and get out and support what you need within your training goals. And then from there, your lift can be done. It can be that simple. It can be as simple as having just 4 to 6 exercises in the entire lift, targeting your full body or potentially splitting it out over 2 full body days and maybe an upper body and plyometric or upper body day, much like we do in the Lyss Method. And if you feel confused and frustrated and you don't know how to do this, go ahead and hit that link for the Lyss Method and let us do it for you. Our programs that are going to be most optimal for what I'm talking about here today is going to be Perform, which is personally programmed by me, where we set this up for you. That includes plyometrics, heavy strength training, and specific accessory work designed to give you general physical preparedness for running or any other endurance or lifestyle activities that you have, so you can be very well rounded. We're getting you in and out of the gym in 45 to 60 minutes every single day. We have our lifestyle program, which is just 2 days a week that allows you to kind of do what we do and perform, but just in 2 days a week, keeping a little bit shorter and briefer for people who have less time. And then we have our race program that when you are training for a race specific goal and your running mileage is going up, your lifting volume is going down, and then we taper you into that race so you can manage the overall fatigue. And so your legs aren't always sore and you're not always beat up, and you can kind of balance and manage those things concurrently at the same time in the same training program. So if you need help, we'd love to have you in the Lyss Method. You can leave a question below if you're unsure about what we have to offer or what you need help with, but otherwise we'll put the link here below. Otherwise, if you need more help, be sure to check out my other lifting videos on my profile. We have a ton of information to help support you as runners and or lifters become smarter and train harder in the gym. And otherwise, if you enjoy this video, hit that like button, leave me a comment telling me if you learned something, and otherwise I'll catch you on the next one.